Alright, so today is lesson 7.3, linear functions. This should be, overall, a pretty big review, if you should be able to do this. Wade, why don't you come sit here?
Let's go.
Lamar, you can sit up here, bud. Thank you, Wade. Alright, so, linear functions. This is something that we've done before. We've worked with linear functions, writing in slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b. When we're looking at input, outputs, and functions, we're going to look at linear functions. So if you think of that word, linear means a straight line, and a function because we're going to have our input-output. So we're going to see today how we can take an input-output, and we can write the function based off our linear equation, and our answer is a straight line. So I'm going to go ahead and I will give a few suckers, I brought more, for our warm-up.
Let's go.
So for the first one, there's 4 examples that we have listed here, and we have 6 equations that are written below. We need to figure out which equation matches up with the line given. And then the first person is kind of setting the pace for everyone because they're going to help explain how did they get the answer. So if I have this first line, and I'm looking at this one, does anyone have an idea what that equation could be? What equation would represent that line? Troy?
Y equals 1/2 x plus 1.
Y equals 1/2 x plus 3. How'd you come up with that, Troy? Okay, so that means right here, that 0, 3 coordinate, that is my y-intercept. So that would be this number. How'd you get 1/2 x? Okay, so if I look, it'd be like rise 1 by rows 1, and then I went over 2. Rise over run. That is correct. So, when we want to identify our lines and they give us a graph, it's not too hard. What we have to make sure we're doing is we want to identify always 2 things. We want to identify our slope as our rise over our run, and you want to find your y-intercept. So let's look at the second one. What would be your equation? Tell me, what do you know, and what do you think our equation could end up being? Ryan? Y equals negative close, but not yet. There's one mistake. Miles?
Y equals -2 over 1x plus 1.
Good. Now, in this one, we can still see our y-intercepts at 5. But then remember to do slope.
Honestly.
What? Alright. So
L.
I'll look at that.
Your dad taking me out.
Okay. Now on this one, wait, what did you say? Say yours again, Miles. That's not right yet. It's a positive 2x. And remember, it has to be a positive 2 because our slope is positive. It's going up and to the right. The way we find it is, we just locate any of our 2 points. And if I follow this line, I know those 2 points. So when I find my slope between 2 points, I look at my rise, which was 2, and it went over 1. So my slope was 2 over 1. Sorry, Miles, you were so close. How about the third one? Trying the same thing. Benjamin?
Is it y equals 4 negative 1?
Y equals what?
4 negative 1.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so they put it this way, but we want to write it correctly where we always put our slope first. And let's check. Our y-intercept is at 4. And if it's negative 1, 2, it means we're going to go down 1 and over 2. So down 1 over 2. And that would be our point. Down 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2. Good job. Last one. Fourth one. Ainsley, please pay attention or you can go elsewhere. Troy, have a seat. Paying attention to this. Ryan. Say it again, I can't hear it.
Y equals x plus 2.
Okay, so y equals x plus 2. Y-intercept's at 2. If I do x, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1.
Oh. Negative.
Negative.
I'm confused. How are we doing this?
Okay, so every part, which is okay, because this is what we're going to do all today. To find out each line, first thing we have to do is identify our y-intercept. That's our b. So if I look at this one, where does this red line cross our, here's our y-axis. Where does that cross the y-axis? Right there. You can see where it's actually crossing it, right? And if you identify that point, that's at 0, because we don't go anywhere where that's, and it's 1, 2. So when we find our y-intercept, we say it is at 2. The y equals 2. Okay? Now to find slope, we have rise over run. You have to use 2 points there. So if I use this point, I know that point, it's negative 1 and 3. Right? I'm going to zoom in so we can see this a little bit better. Slope is always rise over run, and we work left to right. So working left to right, I start at this point, and I have to go to this one. My rise is actually going down. So because I went down, we call that a negative 1. We do our run from this point to over here was a positive 1. So I make my rise negative 1 over 1. Negative 1 over 1 is just negative 1. So I'd be able to say my slope is negative 1. Now the biggest thing is we use the equation y equals mx plus b. And all we're going to do is replace m with our slope. It was negative 1. Anytime we use 1, we don't really have to write the 1. I could just say negative. I could write negative 1, or I could just leave it and say negative x. My y-intercept b was 2, so we say plus 2. This is our equation. Okay? I got one more. I like to ask that question. Here you go, T. T. Alright. So, here's what we're going to do. It says, a linear function is a function whose graph is non-vertical line. A linear function can be written in the form as y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is our y-intercept. Okay, we get that. Here's what's in your notebook. So, open up your foldable so we can do number 1 together. The nice thing is, this is already graphed for us, so this should be fairly simple. First is we have to find the slope, and there's 2 ways we could find slope. One, which is A, I could use rise over run, which means I can look at this visual. I can just look at my graph and tell my rise over run. Or I could choose the 2 points on the line and input to I can't even read. Choose 2 points on the line and input into the slope intercept form. Slope form. Jeez. How do we find slope between 2 points? Exactly. Your notes should be open, so I know you're doing this with. That's part of this. So can you open your notes and follow along? Troy?
Line to my over X to my section.
Good job, Troy. Okay, so this would be our equation if we are trying to find slope between 2 points. You can do either one, but when it's graphed like this, I always think it's easier just to go left to right, any 2 points. I'm going to use this one and this one. So we find our slope. Rise over run. My rise from here to this point, it's going up, so I'm going to have a positive. And it went up 1, 2, 3. Good. Was that you, Alex? You said it? So I know my rise is 3. And then my run, from here, I went over 2. So right now we've identified that our slope is 3 over 2, 3/2. Step 2 is to find our y-intercept. So we follow our blue line, oops, and I look, where does it cross my y-axis? And what coordinate point are we at when we cross our y-axis? 0, -3. So that means the -3 is our y-intercept. The last part, which should be the easiest part now, is write our equation. So I use y equals mx plus b, and I say y equals slope was 3/2 x, b was -3. And we get our equation. So when they give us the graph and they have the picture of the line, it's going to be very easy for us. All we have to do is visually look at a graph, find your slope, find your y-intercept, and then we get it right into the equation. Okay? You will see some of these on this whole unit that we're doing. Yeah, this should be a really good review. So we've been working on the differences, and you're going to see when you scroll down. You're right, this is really, really common. We're going to see how this all relates to a function. When I have an input-output table, how we able to write the relationship as a linear function. Yeah?
Is y and b and x and then the graphs, is that all we're going to do all year? That's like all we've done.
No, but it's a big thing with what you have to do. Because, well, when you get into pre-algebra and this algebra, you do a lot of graphing. So having a solid understanding of what all this means is huge.
Is there such thing as ninth grade math?
No.
You'll go into your pre.
8th grade, we're
We're gonna do algebra. We didn't have a math page.
We might get to it. Okay. Here's our new example. So this one, we don't have the graph, and this is why this is all coming together. This should have been kind of all coming together from even elementary. Because I know when I did elementary and we looked at the functions, we wrote the rule, and the rule was like, you times 3 and then add 2. Well, what we're learning now is how we can write that as a linear equation, that if I graph it, then I can find all my solutions. And that's one big reason why we do graphing. It shows us all of our possible solutions. Here's the difference. On number 2, which I believe is also in here, we don't have the visual. So instead, we have to use this input-output table to write the relationship. Now, the way we do this, remember, this is still like what our input was, and this is our output. So step 1 is we have to find slope. So let's go ahead and try and do that. I want someone that can come up and they can even work it on the board. They can show their work here to the side. We see step 1, finding slope. We use the equation n equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If I have the input table, I can choose any 2 sets of points. But here is something I want to make sure we do not make a mistake of. If I choose any of these 2 x's, I have to choose the corresponding output. Meaning, if I use -3, I have to use 9 as my output. If I use 0, I have to use 3. So another way we can look at this is, underneath, you could end up writing what the coordinates are. So this one is like -3, 9. -2, 7. -1, 5. 0, 3.
Because the function.
Hmm? And now, when you choose 2 points, let's have someone choose which 2 they want to use. They can come up. Alright, Troy, why don't you come on up?
Let's go, Troy.
Yeah.
You can do anything.
Troy, go.
Troy.
Alright, so Troy, which two coordinates are you going to use? The -1, 5 and the 0, 3?
Yeah.
Okay, which one of them is x1, y1, and which one's x2, y2?
This would be y1, and this would be, x1, x1, yeah, and y1.
Okay, why? Why is -1, 5 going to be considered the x1, y1 in this case?
Because it's the farthest on the left.
Good. Working left to right, that would work. So, go ahead and let's write your equation down. You guys should be doing this in your foldable as well. You can use this as your reference guide when you're doing your work.
Wait, so it goes this way, not that way. Goes this way.
Left to right. Really well. Now, Troy, which one's your y2?
The 0, 3. Wait, the 0, right?
Huh?
0 is my y2.
So let's do this. Let me show you one thing now. You chose
Oh, I wrote it backwards.
this point, -1, 5, and 0, 3. This one came first, right?
Yeah.
So this is x, and this is y. This is x, this is y. Which one came first?
X.
Which one? -1, 5 or 0, 3? So this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So let's try that slope again. Good. 3. Zachary, turning around so I don't have to mark it out. We're not even on the right page of our foldable.
Can I find it?
It's the green one that says linear functions.
That's not. Oh, it's up here. I was looking down there. I didn't see that.
Benjamin, let's not be
Sorry,
talking.
sir.
I apologize.
There you go.
Okay, so 3 minus 5 is -2. 0 minus -1 is 0 minus -1, -1.
Two. 1.
positive one.
Told you, Troy.
Subtracting a negative is like adding a positive. So 0 minus -1 is 0 plus 1. Alright. So your slope is -2, 1. Good. Thank you, Troy. Put that back. So big thing I'm going to do is write m equals -2 over 1, or I can just leave it as -2. Now when we go to find our y-intercept, and we don't have a graph, we know y-intercept is always when x equals 0. So if I look at my table and I look at my input and I say the input was 0, so x equals 0, whatever that y comes out to, my output number, that's our y-intercept. So when I see on our graph, we put in 0 for x. Oh my goodness.
Reality doesn't want your mom.
So,
Your father.
we put in 0 and 3 came out,
Left you.
which would tell me that my y-intercept is 3. Okay, using those two pieces of information, you can come up and write the equation. What is the equation for this input-output table? So we have that our slope was -2. We found that our y-intercept was 3. Ainsley's going to try to write an equation. Make sure you're copying it into your notebook.
Too fast.
Too fast?
So you're going too fast. We can't comprehend this.
Oh, am I supposed to talk it out?
You can.
Oh, y equals. Oh wait, those two need to be flipped, right? Sorry, guys.
Good. You want to put your slope first.
For sure not gonna.
Understanding.
Check for understanding.
Okay, there we go, guys.
Now hold on. I don't want you to leave yet. So your equation is y equals -2 plus 3. If that was me, I'd simplify it. I'd say y equals 1.
Huh?
Well, you have -2 plus 3. -2 plus 3 is 1.
Yeah.
So is your equation really y equals 1?
No.
Okay, but I didn't think you can't do that, can you?
What?
No. So what are we missing? Something.
Molly's always in.
She's close. She's close. What is the mistake that we're missing right now? We're missing one fundamental thing.
There's more than one.
Oh, guys, I forgot the X. I forgot the X.
Oh my god.
Trash.
Okay. That is important.
I go
If-
back now.
If
Oh my god.
I need to make sure you guys are hearing this because we gotta make sure we're doing this right. If you forget the x, that changes the whole equation.
I saw you, Troy.
So you have to put the x in there. Our final equation is y equals -2x plus 3. That is correct. Alright, this one is not in your foldable, so I need you to pay attention and see if you can do it. What I want, I'm going to go ahead and give some little suckers up for this.
Don't put weight, that's rude.
Each time, what we do. Wait, are you doing these with us?
Yeah.
Okay, we just did this one. So I have to know.
She didn't.
She didn't?
She didn't
So-
look like Charles.
I know. Alright. Let's look at this one. They gave us a graph. This is not in your foldable, so just follow along. Who can come up and either find the y-intercept or the slope? We're going to have 3 for these. Alright. Ryan, you can go do one of the two. You have to explain it to us. Uh-huh.
Oh, I can't do
Hey!
Can I do one?
You want to do the last one?
Can I do the last
You have
one?
to write the equation.
I can write
You can do it. You're up after Molly.
How about I wrote the equation?
Oh, wait.
Oh, this is big because he caught something that I thought would be our mistake. Ryan, why is the y-intercept -2 and not 1?
Because if you look at it, it's going by twos, not
Good.
regular ones.
Pay attention to your scale. The scale is going by 2s. So, Ryan identified the y-intercept was -2. Molly, this is going to make your slope kind of difficult. Make sure you're paying attention. The scale's going by 2 each time.
Oh, it's going by 2, so then it's like, hold on, is it 8 over 2?
It's hard.
Because it goes over 1, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Since it's going by 2, you times it by 2?
No.
Why?
Wouldn't it be 2 and 1/2?
Say this again. How'd you get this?
So far.
So I got 8 over 2 because it's rise over 1, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go over 1. Since the scale goes by 2.
Oh, from here?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can do that. So, listen up to what Molly's explaining. I thought you pointed from this way. Alright.
I need to go back.
Yes. No, you can say it because you're going to simplify. Okay. Troy, focusing up here. So Molly went from this point right here. And so she went rise over run. 1, 2, 3, 4. And she went up 4. And since she went up 4, but each one counts as 2, she said her rise was 8. And then she went over 1. The scale's still going by 2, so it's 8 over 2. One thing you're missing up though. 2 parts actually. 1, you have to simplify.
Why is it 8 over 4?
Okay? It's supposed to be a 2.
2. I wrote 1, and then I meant to write 2. I'm sorry.
Okay. The other thing is, what type of slope do we have?
Oh, negative, so then it's...
Yeah. Perfect. Alright, you got that down. Where did I put this up here?
Right there.
There? Alright. Alright, so Molly, and then bring.
How about chat out for me?
Nope.
Y equals -4x
What?
minus 2.
Brain doesn't get it, I can try.
Alright, Brandon, come on up here.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Wait,
Okay.
It's not who's doing it, it's who gets it.
Oh, boys, girls, we're not going to get through everything. You're going to have extra work to do. So, follow along. We're almost done.
I don't know how to do this.
Our equation is y equals mx plus b. Okay? Y and x are always going to stay.
Okay.
We're just, instead of saying m, which is our slope, what did Molly say our slope was?
Negative 8 over 2.
Or
Or
m. Look for the m.
oh,
M equals negative 8 over 2 or negative 4 over 1.
Yeah.
So when you start writing your equation, the y and the x always stays put because that's our y coordinate, our x coordinate. So you're going to write y equals,
it has to be yellow.
and what is our m?
Alright,
Alright.
M is negative
Can
8
you
over
please leave
2.
those
They
alone?
keep falling over, so I was wondering.
Not if you're not touching them, they don't.
They was leaning on the desk.
Then just push them up there and leave them alone. Okay, what is m?
Negative 8 over 2.
No, negative what?
Negative 8.
But we simplified it.
Oh, so it'd be negative 4 over 1.
Okay.
I got it. I didn't even touch it.
Can I write it?
Kneel before Christ.
Brandon.
Sir.
I thought F stood as
Not
a
funny.
number.
Not funny.
So negative, shh,
try brain roll.
negative 4 over 1.
Mhm.
Our x
Like
always
Julian.
stays there because that's going to be our x coordinate. So you will write x. So when you guys write your linear equations, we should always see a y and an x because when we look at a line, I can choose any coordinates and I can replace x and y with that coordinate point. Okay, b. What was b?
Negative 2.
So you write negative 2.
Okay.
Plus -2.
Okay, but do we need to say plus a minus?
No.
No.
So you just erase that and you just say minus 2.
Okay.
That's your answer. Y equals negative 4x minus 2. Okay, we have one left to do.
I'm bad.
On this one, I'm going to explain you have two ways you can do this. They give us our input-output table. Advertising, which is A, revenue, which is our R. Remember, since it's input-output, this is our input, which is our X coordinates, and this is our output, which is our Y coordinate. Now, Charles, you need to turn and face forward, not bothering other people in class. You're in there because you were not behaving in your own class.
Oh, I did. Oh.
Well, sorry, so don't be interrupting my class right now. Okay, I look at my input-output table. I do have a grid here, so I have two options. One, I know I'm going to have to write and graph the linear equation, so I'm going to have to graph this, and I have to rewrite it as y equals mx plus b. And remember, this equation, this line that I'm writing, is the relationship between a to b. And I have to identify what the slope and the y-intercept is. Now the reason I said we have two options to do this is because they gave us a table. I can do this just like we did here. Yes? Yeah. We can do this just like that table, where I could use 2 points and I could use 2 points, find the slope, and then when the input's 0, that's my y-intercept. Or, because this is input-output, that's x and y, I can write these as coordinate points. That's 0, 2. This is 2, 6, 4, 10, 6, 14, 8, 18. So what I want you to do in your foldable right now, because it's one of the next problems, it's the last one on there, is let's go ahead and put those coordinate points on. Everyone needs to go ahead, be doing this with us.
Sorry.
And I'm going to go ahead and put my coordinate points in.
Just graph backwards.
So 0, 2, 2, 6, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, I'm going to try using my... I'm going to try...
You're not going to find anything in there.
Who's singing?
Here, you.
Okay, so once you have your coordinate points in, you can make your line. Now that we have that, we've actually graphed this already, so that's one of the points. Now all we have to do is identify our y-intercept and our slope. And just like a few of you showed us, y-intercept would be what? What would be my y-intercept on this line? It'd be 2. It's right here, or it's crossing, or you could have seen it right here. X was 0, so y was 2. What is my slope? What? Nope. What would be my slope?
It'd be up one. No, it'd be up one.
Well, we look between, let's say we look between these 2 points.
1.
How many do I go up?
4,
we go up 4. So my rise is 4. How many do we go over? 2. Can 4, 2 be simplified? To what? 2 over 1. Or just 2. So now we've said our slope is 2. Our y-intercept is 2. What is our equation to finish this? Avery?
Y equals mx plus b.
2x plus 2. Alright. For your homework today, what you need to complete for tomorrow, you're going to work on 7.3, and it's pretty short and easy. I should probably use.
Why does it say 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11?
Okay, I know the numbers are different because we copied them from other places, but it says, write a function rule for this statement. The output is 10 less than the input. So you are still going to write just like we did yesterday. Y equals. You have to write this statement as a rule, as a line. Then you have to graph it. Number 2, the output is 1/3 of the input. Y equals. You have to write that equation, and then you need to graph it. The last 4, all you have to do is use either the graph or the table to write the linear equation. So this is our linear function that relates y to x. Just like we've been doing. You would want to figure out what slope is and what y-intercept is on both of them. Always find out n equals, b equals, and then you can write your equation. So, 6 questions that you have to do total. If you work hard right now, you can get through probably about half of it, or the first 2 at least.